Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Reid, for holding this hearing, and thank you all very much for testifying this morning and for your service to the country. Dr. Robert Kagan testified before this committee last December with respect to Russia, and at that time, there was less information known to the public about what had happened in their interference in the elections. But one of the things he pointed out was that Russia is looking at interference in elections, whether that be cyber or otherwise, the whole messaging piece that you discussed with Senator Heinrich, as another strategy along with their military action and economic and other diplomatic methods to undermine Western values, our Euro-Atlantic alliance, and the very democracies that make up that alliance. Is that something that you agree with, Director Clapper?
Yes, that's clearly a theme. It's certainly something that the Russians are pushing in messaging in Europe. They would very much like to drive wedges between us and Western Europe, the alliances there, and between and among the countries in Europe.
And I assume that there's agreement on the panel. Does anybody disagree with that? So one of the things that I think has emerged as I've listened to this discussion is that we don't have a strategy to respond to that kind of an effort. We don't have a strategy that's been testified with respect to cyber, but a broader strategy around messaging, around how to respond to that kind of activity. Do you agree with that?
I think I'm speaking personally. This is
sure.
not institutional response. And as I commented earlier to Senator McCain, I do think we need a U.S. information agency on steroids that deals with the totality of the information realm, and to mount in all forms, and to include social media.
Can I, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I just ask, why do you believe that hasn't happened? Director Clapper, Admiral Rogers?
For my part, I don't know why it hasn't. I can't answer that.
Admiral Rogers?
From my perspective, in part because I don't think we've come yet to a full recognition of the idea that we're going to try to do something fundamentally different. I think we still continue to try to do some of the same traditional things we've done and expecting to do the same thing over and over again, yet achieve a different result. I don't necessarily think...
No, that's the definition of crazy. I think we've determined that. Secretary Latour?
I would just add that in this area, the capability and intent framework is useful to think about. I think it is only in the last few years that we have seen adversaries with true intent to use propaganda and the ability to reach out as terrorists are doing and try to incite and match that up with the tremendous power that social media tools allow to make that easy and simple and effective and broadly applicable.
So given that this is a strategy, and given that it's aimed not just at the United States, particularly with respect to interference in our elections, but at Western Europe and Eastern Europe for that matter, is there an effort underway to work with our allies through NATO or otherwise? I've been to the Cybersecurity Center in Estonia, but there didn't seem to be a NATO agreement that this was something that we should be working on together to respond to. So is this an effort that's underway?
Just speaking from my lens on things, there's a lot of interest in doing that and doing it more effectively and more comprehensively, but we have not cracked the code on doing it effectively yet. And so we need to keep the pressure on ourselves and our NATO allies who are like-minded in this regard to keep improving our approach.
And it's also got to be much broader than just cyber.
Thank you. Director Clapper, my time is almost up, but before you go, since this is the last opportunity we will have to hear from you, can I just ask you, do you think that the DNI needs reform?
Well, there's always room for improvement. You know, I would never say that this is the ultimate. I do think it'd be useful, though, if we're going to reform or change the DNI or change CIA, that some attention be given to, in our case, the legislative underpinnings that established the DNI in the first place, and then have added additional functions and responsibilities over the years that the Congress has added to our kit bag of duties. But to say that, you know, we can't, there's not room for improvement, I never suggest that.
I appreciate that, and I certainly agree with you. I think that if there's going to be this kind of major reform, hopefully both legislators and others who have been engaged in the intelligence community will be part of that effort. Thank you.
I certainly agree the Congress, no pun intended, gets a vote here, I think.
Thank you.